The topic we're going to cover today is cell basic structure of all living things and cell structure and organization. So these are all the learning outcomes given by Cambridge, and we're going to cover all of them. What is a cell? A cell is the simplest basic unit of life. And the two types of cells we're going to study are plant cells and animal cells. And so for plant cells, an onion cell is the most commonly studied example. And for animal cells, the liver cell is the most commonly studied example. So this is the liver cell shown. And if you look at one individual cell, so you can see that it looks somewhat like this. This is a plant cell, an onion cell, and to view it, we need to use iodine because otherwise it won't be visible under the microscope. Again, if you pick up one cell from here, it's going to look something like this. So let's compare animal cells and plant cells and their structures. So firstly, we have the nucleus in the center that's present in both of the cells, and there is not a very huge difference in the two, except for the number of chromosomes. And so this is the cell nucleus present in both the cells. Then we have the cytoplasm, which is this jelly-like liquid in both the cells. Then we have vacuoles. So in the animal cell, you can see there are small and numerous vacuoles, but in the plant cell, you can see there's one central and large sap vacuole. The mitochondria are also present in both the cells. The animal cell has a cell membrane. The plant cell also has the cell membrane, but it has a cell wall outside the cell membrane. And these green structures in the plant cell are known as chloroplasts. So let's discuss each of these structures separately. The cell plasma membrane, it's partially permeable and it controls the entry of substances into the cell. It is made up of phospholipid bilayer and proteins. What are phospholipids bilayer? It means that it's a two-layered structure, as you can see in this image, and it is made of phosphorus and lipids that are fats as well as proteins as seen in this image. And it's present in both plants and animals. Then we have the nucleus, which is the cell's control center. It controls the cellular activities of a cell. It consists of DNA in the form of chromosomes, which have instructions. And the human cell contains 46 chromosomes. Here you can see you have an image of the cell nucleus and it contains chromosomes. And this is how they look like magnified. Then the cytoplasm is a semi-solid jelly-like substance that consists of the organelles, which are the sites of chemical and metabolic reactions. What are organelles? They're membrane-bound structures within the cell, for example, ribosomes. And metabolism is the sum of all the reactions taking place within the body. Then we have the mitochondria. It is the powerhouse of the cell, and the mitochondria generate energy in the form of ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. What does that mean? It means that adenosine, what is an adenosine molecule? It consists of nitrogen and hydrogen, and it binds with three phosphate molecules, and so that is the form in which mitochondria is formed. Then you have a cell wall which surrounds the plant cell and is made up of cellulose. It gives a regular shape to the plant cell. As you can see, all the plant cells will have the similar regular shape, whereas animal cells have an irregular shape. And it allows all the substances to enter the cell, hence it's permeable. The sap vacuole, it stores concentrated solutions of sugars and mineral ions that are needed by the cell. Its membrane is known as tonoplast, as you can see in this image, and it helps the cell in maintaining turgor pressure. So what happens? This water inside the cell sap, it exerts pressure inwardly to the cell, So that helps maintain turgor. After that, we have the chloroplast, which contains chlorophyll, that is a green pigment that absorbs light energy. So it's an organelle within a plant cell and it carries out photosynthesis. Here you can see this is a chloroplast containing chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the green pigment inside the chloroplast that gives the plant its green color. After that, you have ribosomes. They're another structure present in the cell and they're used for protein synthesis. So the ribosomes, they have you can see here how they're creating chains of amino acids. So they're used for protein synthesis. And if you look at the cell, this is how the ribosomes look like. Plant cell turgidity and flaccidity. So what is turgor? Turgor is the force exerted outward on a plant cell wall by the contents inside the cell. Here you can see the cell vacuole is exerting a pressure on the cell wall, and the cell wall also exerts pressure within itself, as you can see over here. And it's the force within the cell that pushes the cell membrane against the cell wall. Okay, and it helps the plant to stay upright. So the cell wall maintains turgor and the vacuole maintains turgor pressure. Let's see the differences between cell wall and cell membrane. So the cell wall is made up of cellulose, which is a carbohydrate, and the cell membrane is made of phospholipid bilayer and protein. We discussed that. The cell wall is a rigid structure, whereas the cell membrane is a flexible and delicate structure that is made up of a lot of components. The cell wall is found in plants only. The cell membrane is in both animals and plants. The cell wall gives a regular shape to the cell and provides mechanical support by maintaining turgor. We just discussed that. And the cell membrane is controlling the substances which are entering and exiting the cell. So the cell wall is permeable. It allows every single substance to pass through. But for example, in a plant cell, once they've crossed the cell wall, then the cell membrane is selectively permeable. So it will allow some type of molecules to pass and it will not allow other types of molecules to pass. The cell wall is thick and the cell membrane is a thin membrane, and the cell membrane is also known as plasma membrane. So you need not to get confused if you hear that term somewhere. So let's discuss specialized cells. What are specialized cells? They are cells adapted for a specific function. For example, red blood cells contain no nucleus. Why? For their function, they've adapted in a manner. So we're going to discuss why did they adapt and how does a no nucleus help an RBC to carry out its function. And a root hair cell contains many mitochondria. Why? How does a root hair cell absorb minerals? It does that through active transport. Active transport takes place against the gradient using energy from respiration. So more respiration is required to absorb more minerals, and for that mitochondria are needed. Okay, root hair cells. What is the job of root hair cells? Let's discuss three types of specialized cells to understand the topic well. So what is the function of root hair cells? They absorb water and minerals from the soil, and how have they adapted? They have a long and narrow root hair cell that will increase the surface area to volume ratio, and that will help in the absorption of the mineral ions. As you can see here, this long root hair is increasing the surface area of the cell, which would just have been shaped like this. Then we have red blood cells. They transport oxygen and they have no nucleus, so that allows them to carry more oxygen because now nucleus is not taking more space. It also contains a red pigment that binds to oxygen. What's that pigment? Hemoglobin. And that helps carry oxygen throughout the body. It's also biconcave. What does biconcave mean? You can see how it's flattened inwards from the center, and that is helping it to increase its surface area, and in that manner, more oxygen can be diffused. Lastly, we have xylem vessels. So what do xylem vessels do? They transport water and minerals from roots to the leaves. And how have they adapted to their function? So they have no protoplasm. What is protoplasm? It's the cell membrane, it's the cytoplasm, and it's the nucleus. When that's missing, you can see in this diagram of xylem vessels, then they have a lot of space and they become a hollow structure. And so water and minerals can move easily from them because neither do they have cross walls. So since all of the cells merge into one, there are no cross walls, and that becomes one long hollow tube. And they also have a lignin deposition. What is lignin? It's like wood, and it can be deposited within the cell in many ways in the vessel. It can be in the form of spirals. It can be spiral. The deposition can be spiral, or it can be in the form of rings, or it can be in the form of these irregular racks, or it can be fitted inside the xylem vessel, just like in a nut cake, the nuts are fitted inside the cake. So that will help the xylem vessels to stand upright and give the plant mechanical support. Let's discuss the levels of organization. We've done cell structure, now let's move on to cell organization. So the cell is the basic unit of life, and a tissue is a group of similar cells performing the same function. So firstly we have cells, then we have tissues, then we have organs, then we have organ systems, and then we have an organism. So what is a cell? It's the basic or the simplest unit of life. Then the tissues are groups of these similar cells that perform one function. And then organs have contain different tissues. So each of these tissues are performing the same function. So then the different tissues enable the organ to perform a lot of functions at the same time. And these organs make up an organ system. And many organ systems are going to make an organism, which is different organ systems working together to carry out the functions of a whole organism. Let's take an example for that. In the cell, for example, we have an example of red blood cells. Then blood is the tissue. And then the organ is blood vessels or the heart. The organ system is the circulatory system, and then the organism could be human being. You have different examples here as well. That's it under the topic of cell structure and organization.